Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Night Writer podcast. I'm really excited and really pleased to welcome this week's special guest, Lars Henrik. He's a filmmaker and an actor from Germany. Hi, Lars. Welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
I'm really excited to dive into this because we're going to be talking about filmmaking and all of that. But today is also a bit of a true crime podcast because when you got in touch, you told me a story in one paragraph, and I just remember reading it thinking, oh my gosh, like twist after twist was unfolding. So you please tell us all about the Northern Heath.
Okay, yeah. Where to start? How to start? I pitched you that area because that's where I grew up, and it informed a lot of my writing. And I thought it would maybe fit your interests and the stuff you usually cover on your podcast. It might be intriguing for your audience. The Northern Heath is a landscape, basically. First of all, a region in northern Germany, and it's a rural area where not much is going on. And even like the other day, I read a book about the silent movie era in Germany, where some classics were shot in the Northern Heath, and I think it was some British writer who described it as this sparse and depressing landscape, which I think people there would not agree with. It's typified by this plant. I mean, heath. I guess that's something people know. And when it blooms, it's all purple. So you have these gentle hills, all in purple. This rural area where they have like a special kind of sheep. So I guess it would like to look idyllic to people, but it's actually an area where a lot of really creepy, disturbing stuff has been going on and is going on. Like I've left the area to move to Hamburg like 10 years ago, but then for a time I was back there, and while I was there, I think 2 murders happened right around the corner from where I lived. So I think the main thing I wrote to you about was the Heath Murderer, right?
Yeah, it was that, and it was just the way you set it up. I was just thought, oh, we got to get this guy on the show. Because there's so much to unpack. I mean, not just about the area, but about that as well.
But it's fantastic. That whole case actually has become kind of a minor obsession of mine. Like the village where I grew up is surrounded by a forest, by a deep forest, and as kids we would roam through the forest and play. And one day we came across, when I was, I don't know, like 8-9 years old, we came across a hut in the forest. I think it just looked like a kind of nice little house, but it was all boarded up. And then other kids would tell ghost stories about it. It's a haunted house. And when I actually found out what that house was, they were closer to the truth than maybe they knew. That was the house where the Heath murderer, who was a serial killer in that region, would take his victims. So in the 90s, there has been this guy, I think he was in his early 20s, a graphic designer. Well, he started out in Hamburg, actually. He started out in Hamburg. I think he killed one woman in Hamburg, abducted her from the streets. He did horrible stuff. Definite trigger warning, but I won't go into.
Oh, don't worry. I'll
all
trigger
the gruesome details.
Yeah, I'll trigger warning everything in the beginning. Don't worry.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, how far away is Hamburg from Northern Heath?
It's an hour's drive. Okay. I think. Like, yeah.
Okay.
So I think he grew up in Hamburg. And he was this young graphic designer guy, and the way he described it, he would just at some point get this urge to go out and kill a woman, and he's really, we're talking about the worst kind of scum, like everything one would imagine what would happen in a terrible horror film, he did.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think he killed his first victim in Hamburg. And then, and this is what makes this whole thing pretty scandalous, then he abducted his second victim. And he abducted her from the street randomly, like he would do. He was like a strong guy. People also described him as incredibly handsome and charming. I read an article about the process where he was where his case was his case. Oh, I'm sorry. English is a second language. I'm lacking the words, but you know what I'm talking about. Like every Zeuge, everyone who would talk about him, every witness, every especially like in the article that I read, every female witness would first of all point out how very charming and nice and friendly and awesome he was. So I don't know, he apparently had something. So his second victim in Hamburg too, he just grabbed her on the street. He tied her up really brutally. Then he sort of tortured her with a knife and raped her and all that. And I don't know how, but she got him to let her go.
Really?
And yeah, and he for some reason set her free. And she went to the police. And he had to appear in court. And the judge, and this is, I think, 1989 in Germany. When I read this, it blew my mind that this happened. The judge said that poor young man couldn't know that she didn't want to engage in intercourse with him because she was gagged, so she couldn't say no. So he wasn't written up as a sex offender. Because the judge said that's not great.
I know.
Yes, unbelievable. So that's why later they didn't catch him because his name was nowhere. Because I think he got charged with battery or something, but he was not noted as a sex offender. Because that wasn't rape, because she couldn't say no, because she was gagged. Oh so after this, he moved to that small village where I grew up before I was there. And he moved to that village, and he had like a flat or a house. Apparently, he was a bit wealthy, where he would live with his fiancée, and he had a weekend house in the forest, and that was the house we later stumbled across. And in there, he would, he would do his hobby activities, I guess he would call it. And he went on to abduct, rape, torture, and kill several young women in there, until he was finally caught. Like he would chop them up. And have them put them out in the forest in pieces. So people would go jogging and would find an ear, and that's how, and like years later, people would still find pieces of his victims in these forests surrounding that village. And at some point they finally caught him. He got I think he went into an asylum for the criminally insane, where apparently, next twist, his psychiatrist, female psychiatrist, fell in love with him and helped him to flee. And the pair wanted to get to Israel together, and I think at the airport they were caught, and he was being put back. And like a couple of years ago, a friend of mine told me she was working in like as a I don't know. It's not her original profession, so I'm not sure in what capacity she was working there. But she was somehow for work. She was in that asylum for the criminally insane, and some inmate chatted her up, and he was so friendly and so charming. It was so nice talking to him. And after she was done talking to him, someone of the some orderly would take her aside and say, please do not ever talk to that guy on your own again, because that's the Heath murderer, who she knew who that was because I had told her. Yeah, so that's our big serial killer. But apart from that, like it's insane. The horrors this region offers up. It's as if it's like a black hole that sucks in disturbed people. Like there is a
energies. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. For a while, I thought all small towns are that way. Everyone who grew up in a small town, like if you read Stephen King or something like that, like all horror writers seem to be from little villages and traumatized by that. So maybe it's just a small town thing. But he's like the big serial killer in the past couple of years. But there have been like after the war, there was a butcher who would butcher people and feed them to people because there was a famine. And then later, like a couple of years ago, there was a guy who drowned his wife and daughter in the idyllic lake in that village, and yeah, stuff like and while he did that, we were shooting a movie in that forest. We were not very far away from that. It was pretty shocking to find out. Yeah.
All of that was going on at the same time.
Yes. We were shooting a film. It's called Second Commando versus Cthulhu. Sadly, no English subtitles so far, but it's it's a little tiny little comedy about that small town and horrors going on, but taking the whole thing very lightly. And we were shooting in the forest, very close to that lake. And then like a week later, we found out from the news that while we had been shooting there, a guy had drowned his wife and child in that lake. It's creepy. Yeah.
Just going back quickly to the Heath murderer.
Yeah.
Clearly is a guy, I mean, looking at it from like a character perspective, is someone who's obviously very charming and really handsome and could just charm his way out of anything. And you kind of think about these serial killers like Ted Bundy and all of those people, and how they use that to manipulate their victims into doing their bidding and getting them to do whatever they want. I mean, to charm like his therapist and to actually bring him and then running away with him, it's got to take some skill to do.
Yes. I think that's the most fascinating part of the whole story. I don't know. The guy, I mean, I keep bringing it up in the movies I make. We made a film called Bear Kittens, which is basically set in that forest. And at some point, a character comes in and tells all our protagonists can I swear?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, the fucked up history of that forest, and makes it out to be haunted. And all the things he says are actually true. And I think he just sort of mentions the Heath murderer in passing, but that whole story, yeah, it's so insane. Plus, it's such a I mean, I think it's pretty relevant that in 1989, a judge in Germany said, well, that's not rape because she was gagged, so she couldn't say no. I don't know.
That makes you really angry.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. Yeah. So that whole story,
like her whole, just to be dismissed like that, and then to have him walk.
Yes.
And then he went and he had a fiance, so he had this like family life in this town, and then at the same time had this, you know, playhouse in the woods where he would take presumably victims from the town, or places, and then he'd drive into the town.
I don't know too much about the other victims. I know a little bit about his last victim. He knew her. She was from the town. She was like a teenager. And he was there's a so the little village is like an hour from Hamburg, and the little village is close to the little village that does have a train station, but at that point, at that time, late at night, there wouldn't go trains from the next bigger train station. So there's a slightly bigger village, like a 15-minute drive, like an hour walk from that little village. And I think she worked in Hamburg or something. She came back to the slightly bigger village, and she didn't want to walk all the way. So he offered her to drive her. They knew each other. They were, I think, neighbors. And he told her he had little puppies at home, and asked her, because they knew each other, like if she would like to take a look at them. And she said yes. And that did not play out well. Really horrible stuff, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, she presumably got in his car because they were neighbors and she thought she knew him.
Yeah, right. He was a nice guy.
Yeah.
People liked him. People trusted him.
She didn't want to walk home alone, or walk alone, because she thought she might get followed. And there's like a thing going on over here in the UK at the moment, because a young woman, Sarah Everard, was murdered because she was walking home alone. And there's this whole thing going on about, women walking home and, how they feel. And I feel the same, like sometimes when I'm out walking and it's late at night and you sometimes feel like you're being followed. It's like that, what are you meant to do? And then when you have someone offer you a lift that what's your reaction? Do you get in because you know the person? But never in your wildest dreams would you think that it's going to be like a serial killer. But then statistically, a lot of these serial killers they know the victims most of the time. And it's just, do you think there's something like that actually happened, like in your town? It's just quite horrific.
Yeah, right.
Up there as well.
I think that's what makes it especially creepy in small towns. Like probably horrible stuff happens in every big city all the time. But if you live in a small town, you know the victims and you know the perpetrators as well. Yeah. And it has it has a weirdly personal quality, even if you don't know them personally. Like I know people who were very affected by the deaths, because the victims were very close to them. So yeah, it gets a weird closeness. Plus, I think there's another thing about this whole case which makes it, I think, a bit bigger than just a criminal case, like infrastructure. Today there is a train going from that slightly bigger village to the smaller village, so nobody really needs a lift from people they don't really know, and I think that's important. That kind of stuff, and most of the horribleness of that whole case, I think, could have probably been prevented had people I don't know, thought about certain things.
Yeah, well, I mean, it could have always been prevented if the judge just locked the guy up at the first time.
Yes, exactly. Because
he didn't even need to change his name, because he never even got charged with anything, so he just kind of moved.
Yeah, exactly. He I don't know if he moved for social pressures or anything. He just moved. As I said, he had a pretty well-paying job as a graphic designer, early 20s. He seemed to be pretty well off, doing well for himself, not really having any kinds of problems.
Is he still in the asylum now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he's still in there. He's not ever getting out, except someone falls in love with him again and helps him.
As a writer and as a creator and you say yourself that you were inspired to write about all these events that happened. Are you ever tempted to just go and interview him just on a professional basis?
Oh, that's interesting. Yes and no.
It's quite hard, isn't it? Because you don't know what to do or say, and then at the same time you want to like strangle him.
Yeah, well, I've seen interviews with horrible people, the stuff they've done. I don't even want to talk about. But there's on YouTube there's interviews with horrible individuals, and I don't know how much there is really to learn from that, because I often see them as a pretty empty shell, and they rarely say anything profound. I mean, oftentimes they will be asked for motivations, and most of the time they said, well, because I could.
Yeah.
And if you read about this guy, he will say stuff like, yeah, I don't know, I just got the urge and then I did it. And it's I don't know how interesting I find that to be, and I don't know how interesting I want to find that to be. Like, I think oftentimes when we see stories about serial killers, like, I don't know, for example, The Fall or something like that. I think, for example, the Fall, I think, is a great example, because I think that starts out pretty great, but then at some point they, in my view, seem to fall in love with their serial killer, and they seem to find him very interesting.
Yeah.
And I don't know how good I think it is to find that this destructiveness so very interesting. Like, when I look at these people, there's a big nothing. And this is a Stephen King quote. Stephen King said in The Stand, he was writing about, I don't know, have you read The Stand by Stephen King?
No, that's one of the books I haven't read.
Okay, it's a silly thing, but I'm getting to a point. He's dividing up humanity then in the people who create and the people who only destroy. And while of course dividing up humanity is a difficult concept, I often think about that. Like, people who can do nothing but destroy and victimize other people, how interested am I in them? I think media and storytellers in general tend to be very interested in them, which I understand, because when you look at something that you don't understand, you want to make sense of it, you want to get to grasp it, but I think that often there is no sense to it. And I don't know how much of a platform is good to give to those people. I think it's interesting to watch the aftermath of a deed like that. I think it's interesting to engage with the victims, or the people who are close to the victims. I think these cases make interesting material. I don't think these people make interesting protagonists, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so they're more kind of the antagonists, and when you kind of see why they do what they do, you kind of just think, well, am I supposed to feel sorry for them? You know, because they start talking about their childhood and all that kind of stuff, and then you just kind of think, well, is that an excuse? You know, that kind of stuff. I guess people just want to see them as human, like they are human, and don't want to believe they're about monsters, because that would scare them even more.
I mean, shockingly often they don't even talk about their childhood. Like, the Heath murderer, for example, he grew up pretty okay. So I and I don't know if I would want like a backstory that humanizes that, or makes it understandable, or if I would just want that to be a very horrible thing, and that person to be a very horrible person. I don't know. So I think as antagonists, sure, cool, but you also want a great antagonist. I think in this Heath murderer case, I find everything around that so fascinating. I don't know how fascinating I find the guy. Like, I would be very interested in talking to that psychiatrist who freed him. Her story, that would be pretty fascinating to me, I think.
Where is she now?
I have no idea. Her name, I think, wasn't disclosed. Like in the like his name is well known, and that's all public. Thomas something. But her, I couldn't find anything. But I would really be interested in that.
Yeah, and finding out why. Because sometimes you think, well, is she just playing along just for his sake? Or, you know, but then to actually break him out and then go on the run, you think, oh no, actually no, she's actually fallen under his spell.
Yeah. And that's like, sorry.
No, sorry, carry on.
I don't know. I just thought about the third season of Hannibal. I liked Hannibal. Just after talking about how serial killers don't make good protagonists, I love the Hannibal series. Have you watched that?
My grandfather is a huge fan of the books, the Hannibal books.
Ah, okay. No, I mean the TV show by Brian Fuller, I think.
Yeah, I've seen like a couple of episodes, but for me, like Hannibal would always be Anthony Hopkins in my mind.
Yeah. I don't know. I really like the show, and in season 3 or something, he abducts his psychiatrist, played by Gillian Andrews, actually. Yeah, and that's or Anderson, Gillian Anderson.
Gillian Anderson, yeah.
Anderson, yeah, right.
Yeah,
She plays his psychiatrist, and that's a fascinating plot, and it's pretty close to what happened in that tiny village nobody has ever heard about.
Well, they probably took inspiration. I mean, I think
maybe
researchers probably did that, which actually follows on to your own inspiration and the work that you create. And you say that you're inspired by these events. Do you find it kind of cathartic in a way? It's kind of like better to write it out and kind of make sense of it when you're creating it?
Yes. I think I grew up in that tiny village, and I grew up pretty angry, but for different reasons. We had close to that village, there was another town where militant neo-Nazis had a shop, and from there they would organize, and that was having the horrible consequences for everyone living around there. Like, I don't know if you've heard about the NSU. That was a recent thing in Germany. It blew up. There was right-wing extremist terrorist underground organization that had actually been built up by the German Secret Service. It's horrible, but apparently it's over now. And those guys were involved with that. So there was this really violent, militant neo-Nazi scene. And everyone would look away. And in a small town, that gets very close. These people who say, well, it's not that bad. And you think, well, it's pretty fucking bad.
Yeah.
So I was very angry with everyone in that whole area, and we were we organized protests against that, and that again put us and our friends in horrible danger, and there were incredibly violent situations, and it was just a big mess, and at some point I had to get out there for safety reasons. And I was and am very angry about all that. And when I write, of course I start with myself, and I start thinking about what have I seen in my life. And I often go back to small town stories and have them sort of horror themed. But I think this is again similar to my thing with serial killers as protagonists. I had and have a problem of really writing about that thing, about neo-Nazis, because
too close to heart is too feels
it's very close, and most of the time when I see this kind of stuff depicted, I think it's depicted in the wrong way, because I think in this case especially, it's very wrong to empathize with them. I don't think that works, and I think that's actually harmful. Movies like American History X, where a charismatic, swaggy Edward Norton will play this charismatic, awesome, cool neo-Nazi and kill someone in a horrible way in the first scene, that kicking thing. I don't know the English word.
I remember watching that for the first time and thinking that whole movie, actually, I was thinking that's the only movie I've left thinking it just stays with you. Just even the end.
And neo-Nazis love that movie, and they have imitated that scene hundreds of times. And I get pretty pissed at that. I would not want my work to have that effect. So I find it hard to depict that kind of stuff, because I think it's just nasty. There's nothing intriguing or interesting about that. It's just disgusting. And I don't know if I would want to watch something that's just disgusting and doesn't offer me any, not even entertainment value, because these people aren't even entertaining. So yeah, I cannot really write about that directly, but then it sort of became a thing for me to find out more about that region, because I was so angry with that region. And then I found out, wow, this region is very, very horrible and has always been. And there was this serial killer in the 90s, there was a serial killer in the 50s, and there are these random murders and these weird suicides, and everything seems haunted and evil and bad, and as if there's like an evil root in there. And that's that I think that's the thing that happens. Actually, I'm talking about Stephen King too much. I'm not just reading Stephen King. I'm not even reading Stephen King that much, but
okay, I love Stephen King. Go ahead.
Yeah, me too. But still, I get self-conscious. In it, that really speaks to me, where he also makes that about, like, there's this evil thing in this town that makes the people act evil, and it has always been around, and that reflects my own experiences in small towns, in small town environments really well. And so yeah, that's, I think, why I find that stuff interesting, because I guess I at some point I will write about the other stuff, but I'm still 10 years after, not really there. Yeah. So yeah, I like the slightly more fantastical version.
Is it just sort of screen that you do, or do you kind of write like stories and prose as well?
I do, but in German. Like I have a podcast. The Lars Henrik's podcast. There's an international version where we have an English language film history podcast. But in the German version, the Lars Henrik's podcast, I've just, for example, read a novella I've written set in the Cthulhu mythos. And yeah, stuff like that. I do that every now and then, but yeah, my focus lies on screenwriting. So I write my own screenplays, and I make independent films all the time.
Do you go back to your hometown to film? I mean, I know you mentioned, you said like you like to film on location. Has anything actually apart from the guy who drowned his daughter, has anything actually happened to you guys while you're working on the films? Because you hear these stories about, you know, people doing horror movies and they go on location and things start happening. I don't know. Is there anything that happened to you guys, or is it all just normal?
Well, actually, on that shoot, when that horrible murder happened, I think it was that night or the next night, when I thought I had left my wallet somewhere on location, and we had just shot right in the middle of the forest, far away from any tracks. So I went back deep into the forest late at night. It was dark. I went on my own, and now I really have to look up a word. There was wait a second.
Bear with us.
It was quicksand. Quicksand. Yes, there was quicksand. I think that's probably the word. That it's a swampy region.
Yeah, and you're sinking in it.
Yeah, and at some point, so I just walked through the forest, and suddenly I was up until here, I think, until right under my shoulders in quicksand. And I thought, well, this is unfortunate. I don't know how to get out of here. There was a I was able to reach a tree and pull myself out, and it smelled horribly. It was a horrible thing to happen, and I wish this would be like a like a proper horror film, so I could say, well, that film is clearly haunted, but it's a comedy. It's a horror comedy about some love. We're basically spoofing Lovecraft. But yeah, that happened, and then at some point we were shooting in that forest. A branch hit my eye, and I had to get some minor eye surgery. So that film actually did feel kind of haunted.
Yeah. Wow. Because I don't know if you've listened to any of them, but I kind of did some podcasts on fairy tales. Mm-hmm. And a lot of them, I mean, most of them obviously happened in Europe. and Germany, and you kind of, you know, that just what you were saying about that house in the woods, it's really like Hansel and Gretel or Little Red Riding Hood or Snow
Yes.
White, and then
Yes.
they always end up like kids or, you know, young women, and they always just end up in the woods, and then there's always just a random house, and it has either, you know, a witch or there's the wolf, and then, you know, and I'm sort of trying to find the origins of these stories, and a lot of them have pretty dark origins in itself, back from, you know, whatever century it was told.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're telling me the story and it only happened in the 90s, but it just feels so fairy tale like, and all of it's still going on, just like, what? You know, it just feels the parallels are all still there, literally, like when you were setting the scene about the house and the woods, it's like, it all just felt like brought back all those memories of when I was researching for all of those stuff.
Maybe that's why I love creepy fairy tales so much. I think all the Grimm's fairy tales, I think, should be made into dark fantasy films. I love that kind of story. I love to write that kind of story, but I haven't published anything yet. But like I think my films often have a fairy tale like quality to them. Like most of them are set in some kind of forest, and there's always something not quite natural going on. I think the woods have that. They make things feel like fairy tales and very, very dark. And I don't know what it is about it, but yeah, it's definitely a thing.
Is there anything you're working on at the moment? Anything new you're working on?
Oh yes, oh yes. Like at the moment, that's another thing. When so when I went back to make Second Commando versus Cthulhu, which is on YouTube but doesn't have English subtitles yet, so whatever. That was horrible, and there was a murder happening, and the whole town was exactly as I had remembered it. But a few years later, I went back and we shot a series called F-60 Kamikaze, which is again about people growing up in that kind of small town, and it sort of it deals more head on with the frustration of growing up in a really close-minded small town. It's still not about Nazis, but it's close. And that's a 7-part miniseries that we have put our everything into. Like I don't know, all the money I ever had and all the time and years of my life. It's still not done yet. We're deep into post-production. It will hopefully be done this year and be released this year. It's a really big project for me, and like 100 people worked on it, and it's a huge thing. And to shoot that, we also went back to the village and the slightly bigger village right next to it, and shot all the stuff on location. Like it's filled with stories that didn't necessarily happen to me, but happened to people who I knew, with characters who are made up of many people who I actually have encountered. Like I think whenever somebody said where we were developing the scripts, whenever somebody went, well, that's not really realistic, I could point to the real thing that had happened. So we went back to shoot that there. And at that point, I sort of saw that all our work, like all our activism, and like out of that protest against those neo-Nazis and their social acceptance, grew a kind of culture that hadn't been there before, but that is there still, and that has remained even though we went away. And by now, the neo-Nazis have actually gone away, and it has really gotten better. And that was kind of nice to go back and see, wow, we did have an impact here, and here is there's an alternative culture now, and I don't know, that was kind of nice. So that is not exactly what we were looking for, not the horrible hauntedness, but that was nice to see. Okay, it got better. So we made that. We're making that. I hope it will come out this year. That's really the project of a lifetime. It's really big. And then we just made in December during lockdown, under like lockdown conform conditions, with only 3 actors. We made a movie here in my flat. That's called COVID Metamorphoses, like Ovid's Metamorphoses, you know.
Yeah.
Sort of clever, right? So we developed that with those 3 actors, and it's taking motifs of the mythological stories of the metamorphoses and putting them in a living community on lockdown over Christmas. So it starts out as a Christmassy rom-com, and then those mythological elements start to creep in, and it has like a ton of magical realism, and I really love it, and I'm very proud of it. The last couple of days we haven't slept much around here, and have just sat on the editing computer, and we're very close to finished. I'm gonna write and record the soundtrack, but that's the last thing that has to be done, and that is hopefully going to be released around Christmas this year. I hope, maybe even in cinemas. But
you should do everything. Like you film and you write and you direct and you act and record and edit.
Yeah,
everything. Wow.
We're 3 people. We're like a filmmaking punk band. So it's me, then it's Nisan Arikan, who edits and produces the films and develops them with me. She's my girlfriend, and we share a film by credit pretty much always. She's the editor, and also she's often an actress in the films. And then there's Christian Grundei, a fellow filmmaker from Hamburg. He's also a director, and he's our DOP, and helps with all kinds of technical stuff. So by now there's nothing in the production process that the 3 of us cannot do, and that's the way our films get developed.
Before then, though, like when you were screening it before COVID, did you ever go back to those villages that you were filming in, and like your hometown and those other places, and screened your stuff there?
Actually, no. I've shot a lot of stuff there, but we were not able to ever screen something there, which is not because of me. I tried. They didn't want that. Okay. There's like one cinema in that whole area, and they weren't interested. And there are other cultural places, but the film sounded too. I think at some point I wrote them an email and I pitched them a couple of films that we had and asked, can we show any of this at your place? And they answered me, no, those do not sound suitable. So yeah.
So they're happy for you to film it and show it to the rest of the world, like their village in the rest of the world, but they don't want to see it themselves.
Yes.
Anyway,
like when we shoot F60, I'm sure we're gonna go back and show F60 Kamikaze there, because there's like a youth center where the people really were very supportive of the project and helped us. And there's a guy that we know pretty well. He's a friend, and I guess if nowhere else, then it's going to be shown there, because they are proud of taking part in it. Because we organized like a big free concert of a very popular German hip hop group there. Because a scene was set during that concert, and then we actually had the concert happen, and that was really cool, and really cool for the kids in their town. That was like a big event, so I think they will want to screen it somehow, but they haven't been there long now. So before that, no, there was no way of showing anything there. And when we that's not a poor area. I think when we pitched F60 Kamikaze, I was often talking about British shows like Skins or This Is England, in which I think these shows do very well in depicting the small town coming of age frustration. It's great, and that kind of thing does not exist in Germany. So we were always saying, okay, look at The End of the Fucking World, look at Skins and all of that stuff. That's what we want to do. The main difference is that people in these small towns here in Germany, they aren't poor. Those are rich people. And when we started looking for people to give us money to shoot that, a journalist from that local newspaper told us, well, there is plenty of millionaires living around here. Let's do this. I'm gonna write a big article about you, and it's gonna be on the front page. And all these people are gonna want to invest in that show. So we did that, and the only response we got was that I don't know. We went into a special part of the forest that looks especially beautiful, and we said we want to shoot here. And then some guy wrote to us, well, I am actually a hunter and I have a license to hunt in that area. And no, you're not going to shoot there because that's going to disturb the animals and then I can't hunt them. That was the only response. So yeah, these people there really hate me.
Well, one day.
Well, I try to give them lots of reasons to hate me. I don't think people there will love F-60 Kamikaze. The village is not represented in a way that it is going to want to be represented. I hate that place and I hate those people.
Well,
they've gotten better, but
it's good to be controversial. It's good to be controversial.
Yeah, right.
And finally, what do you hope that people can sort of take away from your work and your stories?
That's interesting. When we were developing F-60 Kamikaze, one guy actually said, what are you trying to say with this? And I was like, I was very taken aback by that question. And then he said, well, you are talking to a young audience. So what's your message? Because your message seems to be everything is shit. Deal with it.
Yeah.
So yeah, then I became aware of that in that particular story. And I think up until then, the stuff I wrote often had a quite pessimistic outlook. Yeah, I don't know. I was kind of angry in my early 20s. So my first film is called Why Hans Wagner Hates the Starry Sky. And it starts out as a cliche romantic comedy, and then Lovecraftian. Lovecraft is another thing that I like to go back to. Lovecraftian gods come in, and everything gets blown apart. So my point there was, okay, right? There's the hero's journey, right? So the hero has to do certain things, put himself out there, go on an adventure, and then he will change, and things will change, and things will get better. Well, not in this case. My hero goes on his journey, and then something entirely out of his control, like a storm, like a pandemic, something he cannot control. In this case, Lovecraftian gods happen, and everything goes to shit. So that was what I was trying to say there. And then later on, I think the film that kind of put us on our path to travel to international film festivals, and the first of my films that was actually distributed by an American distributor called Leon Must Die. It's on Amazon Prime. That's a lot about death. Like there's a young guy, mid-20s, who's terminally ill, and he develops technology to upload his mind into a computer so he can never die. But this means the downfall of mankind. So people from the future send back an assassin to kill Leon, but the assassin falls in love with Leon, and then hilarity ensues. And it's a lot like Before Sunrise.
It reminds me a bit of Terminator.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. Before Sunrise meets Terminator. So the two of them go around and they philosophize about death, and in the end they make a decision. So that there's always a very I think pessimistic and sort of angry outlook, but also like look at these nasty things that are undeniably true. Yeah. Like stuff outside of your control can happen, and it can screw up everything. You will die, and it will not be cool. It will be awful. It will happen. That was often a message that I was or am pressing. And then then later we made a film called Perfomaniacs, which is a bit more political. I think it's a satire about a theater troupe who lives by the motto everything is allowed in art, and they do mean everything, including murder. and that's sort of a satire on the American discussion about free speech, and just looking at where are the boundaries of that. So yeah, I like to in an entertaining way with hopefully likable characters and a lot of humor, look at unpleasantries. And in F60 Kamikaze, then I actually went back and thought, okay, all right, what can I say that is a bit more productive than just, well, that's terrible. And then it became more about how it became about what can one do, like if you are a small town kid and it's just this small town where there's no culture and nobody is interested in you and nothing interested in happening, what can you do other than kill yourself? And then it's about how these kids start to make their own that they go and squat in a building, and they have events, and they make art. So that's, I think that might be quite cliched, but that's the thing that I always go back to the healing powers for the individual and the society in all of storytelling and art.
Great, thank you so much, Lars. I'll put all the links of everything so people can find it out in the.
Awesome, thank you.
Including your podcast as well.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone. We'll see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.